She never imagined her wedding day would feel this quiet, not because the room lacked people, but because her heart had already accepted that this moment carried no joy, no excitement, and no future built on love. Her name was Lena Moore, and as she sat across from the man who would soon become her husband, she held her hands together tightly, reminding herself again and again that this marriage was not a dream, but a decision made out of desperation. The man in front of her, Daniel Cross, was known in business circles as someone who never acted on emotion, someone who calculated every move with precision, and someone who had long stopped believing that love had any place in a successful life. This union had not been arranged by families or fate, but by necessity because Lena's family was collapsing under debt, while Daniel's public image demanded stability, and a marriage offered a solution to both problems without requiring honesty of the heart. When the official papers were placed on the table, Daniel signed without hesitation, his expression calm and distant, as if this was no different from any other contract he had approved that day. Lena hesitated, not because she doubted the decision, but because she understood what she was giving up the moment she placed her signature on that page, knowing that once this began, there would be no room for regret. After the marriage was finalized, there was no celebration, no warm congratulations, and no shared smiles, only a quiet drive to a large house that felt more like a hotel than a home. That night, Daniel explained the rules with a tone so neutral, it felt rehearsed, telling her clearly that this marriage would never involve love emotions or expectations, and that as long as she fulfilled her role, her financial worries would be taken care of. Lena listened carefully and agreed without argument, because she had not entered this marriage with illusions, and because survival had always taught her that emotional distance was safer than hope. Days passed slowly in the house, and Lena began to understand that her presence was meant to be invisible, as Daniel left early in the mornings, returned late at night, and spoke to her only when necessary. Still, as she adjusted to this new life, Lena found herself noticing small things she had promised herself to ignore, like the exhaustion hidden behind Daniel's composed expression, or the silence that followed him through every room as if loneliness had become his shadow. She reminded herself constantly that she was here for money, not connection, and that this arrangement had an expiration date. Yet despite that awareness, something subtle began to shift as familiarity replaced distance. One evening, without being asked, Lena prepared dinner and waited, telling herself it was simply courtesy. But when Daniel finally sat down and ate the meal in silence, she felt a strange sense of accomplishment she couldn't fully explain. It was in moments like these, quiet and unnoticed, that Lena failed to realize the danger she was walking into. Because while the marriage had been built on need, the human heart rarely follows the same rules as contracts. And without knowing it, Lena had taken her first step toward a feeling she was never supposed to have, in a marriage that was never meant to include love. Life inside the house slowly settled into a routine that felt calm on the surface, yet heavy beneath, as Lena learned when Daniel left, when he returned, and how silence filled every space between them. She stopped expecting conversation and focused instead on small tasks, believing that keeping busy would prevent her thoughts from drifting toward feelings she was not supposed to have. Daniel remained distant, but not careless, and although he rarely spoke, he noticed when meals were prepared, when lights were left on, and when the house felt less empty than before. At first, he ignored these changes, telling himself they were conveniences, but over time, he began coming home earlier, not because he needed to, but because he expected someone to be there. They started speaking more, though the conversations were simple and safe, touching on daily matters rather than emotions, as if both were afraid of crossing an invisible line. Lena learned about Daniel's past in fragments, about a childhood shaped by pressure, about trust that had once been broken, and about why he believed attachment only led to weakness. Listening to him, Lena felt understanding grow where distance once lived, and without realizing it, She stopped thinking about the contract and began caring about the man himself. Her feelings deepened quietly, without drama or sudden realization, settling into her heart during shared dinners and late-night conversations that felt more honest than anything she had known before. Daniel, however, saw her presence differently, mistaking comfort for stability and familiarity for something that did not require protection. When news reached Lena that Daniel's former lover had returned to the city, she tried to remain calm, convincing herself that what they shared now was enough. That belief shattered the night she overheard his voice through a half-closed door, speaking casually about ending the marriage once it had served its purpose. Lena stood frozen, listening to words that felt sharp and final, realizing in that moment that while her feelings had grown real, his had never changed. She retreated quietly, her chest tight, understanding too late that she had entered the marriage for money, but had stayed for love. From that night on, Lena began pulling back, hiding the pain behind polite smiles, unaware that the final stage of their story had already begun. Lena changed quietly after that night, not through anger or confrontation, but through distance that slowly removed her warmth from the house. Daniel noticed the shift, yet misunderstood it, believing she was simply growing restless or dissatisfied with the arrangement they had agreed upon. Convinced that the contract had reached its natural end, Daniel prepared the divorce papers with the same calm efficiency he used for business deals. When Lena saw the documents, she did not cry or protest, because the pain had already settled too deeply for visible reaction. She signed the papers without hesitation, a single motion that surprised Daniel more than any argument could have. The moment she left the house, the silence returned, but this time it felt heavier, sharper, and impossible to ignore. Days passed, and Daniel began noticing the absence of small things, like untouched dinners, dark rooms, and the lack of quiet conversations he had once taken for granted. For the first time, he questioned whether comfort had slowly become something far more important. When Daniel finally found Lena again, she was no longer waiting, no longer hoping, and no longer willing to settle for half-hearted affection. She told him the truth calmly, admitting that she had married him for money but stayed because she had fallen in love. Daniel felt regret strike him all at once, realizing that while her feelings had grown slowly, his understanding had arrived far too late. He reached for her, but Lena stepped back, explaining that love discovered only after loss was no longer something she could accept. As she walked away, Daniel remained standing alone, surrounded by success, yet empty of everything that had once made his life feel human. Only then did he understand that the woman he had underestimated had given him more than loyalty or comfort, and that losing her was the price of learning what love truly meant.